It mentioned Soda Pop dropping out of school so we could stay together. And that I made honor roll at the school all the time and might be a future track star. Oh yeah, I forgot I'm on the A Squad Trek team. Youngest one? I'm a good runner. Bennett said we shouldn't be separated if we had worked so hard to stay together. The meaning of that last line finally hit me. You mean, I swallowed hard, that they're thinking about putting me and Soda in a boys' home or something? Steve was carefully combing his hair in complicated swirls. Something like that. I sat down in the daze. We couldn't get hauled off now. Not after me and Derry finally had gotten through to each other, and now that the rumble was coming up and we could get this social greaser thing settled once and for all. Not now when Johnny needed us both and needed us and Dally was in the hospital and wouldn't be out for the rumble. No, I said out loud, and Tuba, who was scraping the egg off the clock, turned to stare at me. No what? No, they ain't putting me in a boys' home. Don't worry about it, Steve said, cocksure he and Soda Pop could handle anything that came up. They don't do things like that to heroes. Where's Soda and Superman? That was as far as he got because Derry, shaved and dressed, came in behind Steve and lifted him off the floor and then dropped him. We called Derry Superman or Muscles at one time or another, but one time Steve made the mistake of referring to him as all brawn and no brain, and Derry almost shattered Steve's jaw. Steve didn't call him that again, but Derry never forgave him. Derry never really gotten over not going to college. That was the only time I've ever seen Soda mad at Steve, although Soda attaches no importance to education. School bored him. No action. Soda came running in. Hey, where's that blue shirt I washed yesterday? He took a swig of chocolate milk out of the container. Hate to tell you, buddy, Steve said, still flat on the floor, but you have to wear clothes to work. There's a law or something. Oh, yeah, Soda said. Where's those sweet jeans, too? Alright, they're in my closet, Derry said. Hurry up, you're going to be late. Soda ran back, muttering, I'm hurrying. Steve followed him, and a second later there was a general racket of a pillow fight. I absentmindedly watched Derry as he searched the icebox for chocolate cake. Derry, I said suddenly, do you know about the juvenile court thing? Without turning to look at me, he said evenly, yeah, cops told me last night. Well, I knew it when he realized we might get separated. I didn't want him to worry anymore, but I said, I had one of those dreams last night. The one I can't ever remember. Derry spun around to face me, genuine fear on his face. What? I had a nightmare, the night Mom and Dad's funeral. I had nightmares and wild dreams every once in a while when I was little, but nothing like this one. I woke up screaming bloody murder, and I could never remember what it was that scared me. It scared Soda Pop and Derry almost bad as it scared me. For night after night, weeks on end, I would dream this dream and wake up in a cold sweat or screaming. And I never could remember exactly what happened in it. Soda began sleeping with me, and it stopped occurring so often. But it happened often enough for Derry to take me to a doctor. The doctor said I had too much imagination. He had a simple cure, too. Study harder, read more, draw more, and play football more. After a hard game of football and 4 or 5 hours of reading, I was too exhausted mentally and physically to dream anything. But Derry never got over it. And every once in a while he'd ask me if I ever dreamed anymore. Was it very bad? Two-bit question. He knew the whole story, and having never dreamed about anything but blondes, he was interested. No, I lied. I'd awakened in the cold, sweat, and shivering, but Soda was dead to the world. I just wiggled closer and stayed awake for a couple hours, trembling under his arm. That dream always scared the heck out of me. Derry started to say something, but before he could begin, Soda Pop and Steve came in. You know what? Soda Pop said to no one in particular. When we stomp the Sochies good, me and Steve here are going to throw a big party and everybody can get stoned. Then we'll chase the Sochies clear down to Mexico. Where you can get the dough, little man. Derry found the cake and was handing out pieces. I'll think of something, Soda Pop assured him between bites. So you gonna take Sandy to the party, I asked? Just to be saying something. Instant silence. I looked around. What's the deal? Soda Pop was staring at his feet, but his ears were reddening. No, she went to live with her grandmother in Florida. Well, how come? Look, look, Steve said, surprisingly angry. Does he have to draw you a picture? It was either that or get married. Her parents almost hit the roof at her idea of marrying a 16-year-old kid. 17, Soda said softly. I'll be 17 in a couple weeks. Oh, I said, embarrassed. Soda wasn't so innocent. I've been in on bull sessions, and his bragging was as light as anyone's, but never about Sandy. Not ever about Sandy. I remembered how her blue eyes had glowed when she looked at him. I was sorry for her. There was a heavy silence. Then Derry said, well, we better get to work, Pepsi-Cola. Derry rarely called Soda by Dad's pet nickname for her. But he did so then because he knew how miserable Soda Pop was about Sandy. Hate to leave you here by yourself, pony boy, Derry said slowly. Maybe I ought to take the day off. I've stayed by my lonesome before. You can't afford a day off. Yeah, but you just got back, and I really ought to stay. I'll babysit him, Two-Bit said, ducking as I took a swing at him. Haven't got anything better to do. Why don't you go get a job, Steve said. Ever consider working for a living? Work? Two-Bit was aghast. And roll my rep? I wouldn't be babysitting the kid here if I knew of some good day nursery job open on Saturdays. I pulled open the chair and I pulled his chair over backward and jumped on him, and he had me down in a second. I was kind of short on wind. I got to cut out smoking or I won't make track next year. Holler, Uncle. Nope, I said, struggling, but I didn't have my usual strength. Derry was pulling on his jacket. You two do up the dishes. You can go to the movies if you want before you go see Dad and Johnny. He paused for a second, watching Two-Bit squash the heck out of me. Hey, Two-Bit, lay off. You ain't looking so good. Pony boy, you take a couple aspirins today and go easy. You smoke more than a pack today and I'll skin you. Understood? Yeah, I said, getting to my feet. You carry more than one bundle of roofing today up and I'll serve on meal skin you. Understood? He grinned one of his rare grins. Yeah, see you all this afternoon. Bye, I said. I heard her Ford's vroom and thought, Soda's driving, and they left. Anyway, I was walking around downtown and started taking this shortcut around through an alley. Two-Bit was telling me about one of his many exploits while we did the dishes. While I did the dishes. He was sitting on the cabinet sharpening his black-handled switchblade he was proud of. And I ran into three guys. I says, howdy, and they just look at each other. Then one says, we could jump you, but since you're as slick as we figure you are, you won't have nothing worth taking. I says, buddy, that's the truth, and went right on. Moral? What's the safest thing to be when one is met by a gang of social outcasts in an alley? A judo expert, I suggested. No, another social outcast, Two-Bit yelled and nearly fell off the cabinet from laughing so hard. I had to grin too. He saw things that made them into something funny. We're going to clean up the house, I said. The reporters or police might come by, and anybody... anyway, it's time for those guys from the state to come by and check on us. This house isn't messy. You ought to see my house. I have, and if you had the sense of a billy goat, you try to help out around your place instead of bumming around. Shoot, kid, if I ever did that, my mom would die of shock. I liked Two-Bit's mother. She had the same good humor and was easy going the ways that he did. She wasn't lazy like him, but she'd let him get away with murder. I don't know, though, it was just about impossible to get mad at him. When we had finished, I put on Dolly's brown leather jacket. The back was burned black, and we started for 10th Street. I drive, as Two-Bit says, he walked up the street trying to thumb her eye, but the brakes are out of my car. Almost killed me and Kathy the other night. He flipped up the collar of his black leather jacket to serve as a windbreak while he lit a cigarette. You ought to see Kathy's brother. Now there's a hood. He's so greasy he glides when he walks. He goes to the barber for an oil change, not a haircut. I would have laughed, but I had a terrific headache. We stopped at the Tasty Freeze to buy Cokes and rest up, and the blue Mustang that had been trailing us for 8 blocks pulled in. I almost decided to run, but Two-Bit must have guessed this, for he shook his head ever so slightly and tossed me a cigarette. As I lit up, the socials who had jumped Johnny and me at the park hopped out of the blue Mustang. I recognized Randy Adderson, Marcia's boyfriend, and the tall guy that had almost drowned me. I hated them. It was their fault that Bob was dead. Their fault Johnny was dying. Their fault that Soda and I might get put in a boys' home. I hated them so bitterly and contemptuously as Dally Winston hated. Two-Bit put an elbow on my shoulder and leaned against me, dragging on a cigarette. You know the rules. No, just for the rumble, he said to the socius. We know, Randy said. He looked at me. Come here. I want to talk with you. I glanced at Two-Bit. He shrugged. I followed Randy over to his car, out of earshot of the rest. We sat where his car was for a second. Golly, that was the toughest car I'd ever been in. Read about you in the paper, Randy said finally. How come? I don't know. Maybe I felt like playing a hero. Huh, I wouldn't have. I would have let those little kids burn to death. You might not have. You might have done the same thing. Randy pulled a cigarette out and pressed it against the car lighter. I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. Never would have guessed a greaser could pull something like that. Greaser didn't have nothing to do with it. My buddy over there wouldn't have done it. Maybe you would have done the same thing. Maybe a friend of yours wouldn't have. It's the individual. I'm not going to show up at the Rumble tonight, Randy said slowly. I took a good look at him. He was 17 or so, but he was already old. Like Dallas was old. Jerry had said her friends were too cool to feel anything, and that he could remember watching sunsets. Randy was supposed to be cool and too cool to feel anything, and yet there was pain in his eyes. I'm sick of all this. Sick and tired. Bob was a good guy. He was the best buddy a guy ever had. I mean, he was a good fighter and tough and everything, but he was a real person too. You dig? I nodded. He's dead. His mother had a nervous breakdown. They all spoiled him rotten. I mean, most parents would be proud of a kid like that. Good looking, smart and everything. But they gave in to him all the time. He kept trying to make them say no, and they never did. They never did. That's all he wanted was for someone to tell him no. To have somebody lay down the law and set the limits on him. That's all we really want. One time, Randy tried to grin, but I could tell he was close to tears. One time he came home drunker than anything. He thought they were going to raise the roof. You know what they did? They thought it was something they'd done. They thought it was their fault. That they'd failed him and driven him to it or something. They took all the blame and didn't do anything to him. If his old man had belted him just once, he might be alive. I don't know why I'm telling you this. I couldn't tell anyone this. My friends, they think I was off my rocker or turning soft. Maybe I am. I don't know what to think of this sick old mess. And that kid, your buddy, the one who got burned, he might die? Yeah, I said, trying not to think about Johnny. And tonight, people that get hurt in rumbles may be killed. I'm sick of it, because it doesn't do any good. You can't win, don't you know that? You know that, don't you? When I remained silent, he went on. You can't win even if you whip us. You'll still be where you were before, at the bottom, and we'll still be the lucky ones with all the breaks. So it doesn't do any good to fight and to kill him. Doesn't prove a thing. We'll forget it if you win, or if you don't. Greasers will still be greasers, and socias will still be socias. Sometimes I think it's the ones in the middle that are the really lucky stiffs. He took a deep breath. So I'd fight if I thought it would do any good. But I think I'm going to leave town, leave my little old Mustang and all the dough and can carry and get out. Running away won't help. Oh, well, I know it, Randy half-sobbed, but what can I do? I'll mark chicken if I punk out at the Rumble, and I'd hate myself if I didn't. I don't know what to do. Well, I'd help you if I could, I said. I remembered Terry's voice. Things are rough all over. I knew then what she meant. He looked at me. No, you wouldn't. I'm a socia. You get a little money and the world hates you. No. I said, you hate the whole world.